Again, it is so good having you on the Coach Launch podcast today. I'm super excited to be diving into this and looking forward to hearing more about your story in building your business. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Matthew.
Now, I've been really excited to dive into what you've been doing in real estate and building your business up over the last few years. You sound like you've got something so cool that our audience would be able to digest. Um, Now, your experience is very vast. You have a great background in real estate. You've built up an incredible business. How about, could you tell the audience what it is that you do and how you help people?
Sure. I've built a private network to where we identify mobile home parks or private lending opportunities, and we co-invest as a group. And what we do is we keep everybody passive to where they can participate in real estate, but they're not running the day to day. These are for busy investors, business owners that may have the time or they don't have the time, they have the money to do so. So my job is to find the operators and help vet these deals. And then we go and we invest as a group.
Interesting. And so the term passive obviously means, I mean, there's no real things as passive income, right? So what you're doing essentially is doing the active part, and
That's
then
right.
removing that active part and giving people the ability to invest and have that passive, because I believe you've got the active part working, right?
That's right. It's very active behind the scenes. The investor is interested in these because they get to remain passive along the way. Real estate's a full-time job. So our job is to make it easy on them to where they can still participate, get the tax benefits and the cash flow, but not have to deal with tenants, turnover, and things like that that none of us like in the industry, but it is part of it.
Wow, so good. Very unique. Tell me, let's go back a little bit. Talk to me about where this all started. How did this journey come to be?
I was in a family business and I live in Texas. This is a dry cleaning company. I got involved because my dad had founded it in the 80s. And after college, I was asked to come and participate in the business. And I didn't know if I wanted to yet, but I'm happy I did. It changed the trajectory of my life and helped me become an entrepreneur, real estate investor, and have a lot of time freedom. So as I get involved with this business, I start buying real estate along the way. This is starting back in 2014. Each year I'd buy a property. Started with residential rentals, then got into a few commercial spaces, and eventually 2023 I sell this business and I have a larger gain than normal. I found passive investing in real estate because I knew real estate. I've been doing it for 10 years, but I was trying to identify a way to mitigate some of the increase in tax that I'd have that year. Passive income and passive real estate investing was that answer because in a short time frame, I was able to invest in some properties, get a depreciation tax loss, which is just a minus sign on a piece of paper. You're not actually losing the money, but it's in our tax. And so I was able to take advantage of some healthy tax code for the real estate world. And I just fell in love with it. I was used to being a landlord all these years. I still actively manage and run my own properties, but I'm having a lot
Yeah.
more fun in the passive space and getting people involved that never thought they would be in real estate, especially owning mobile home parks. People don't often think about that as the glorious side of real estate, but it's a good asset class.
So let's take a little bit of a step back. Your dad had a business in a laundry business, is that correct? Or dry cleaning
That's right.
business?
That's right.
And so you've come out of college and you've taken on this business. What was it like for you, mindset wise? Your dad has built this established business and you've come into the process. Talk to me through what you were thinking at that time. Like, what was that like?
Don't fail, no matter what. When I got in, he had removed himself from the business because he was quite frankly burnt out. And that
Yeah.
industry is difficult. You have a lot of customers that are coming into the stores, and there's a lot of expectations. You're dealing with people's used products, and you have to return them in better condition than they were dropped off. So it's difficult to
Oh,
please everybody. And I think that leads to a lot of people being burnt out in the industry. But for me, I was young, started at 21 years old, and I knew I had good work ethic. I didn't know anything about running a business, so I had to sharpen my business pencil along the way. But I just started at the bottom floor, started pressing clothes, learned how to take stains out of clothing. Turns out it's all chemistry, right? You're mixing products and solutions to do that. So I know way too much about taking stains out of clothing. From there, it was just implementing a lot of systems that I think the business needed but didn't have yet. Simple stuff like
Wow.
a point of sale system, company uniforms, manager
Mm.
meetings,
So
reviews of the business financials.
you were modernizing the business as you came into taking things over.
That's right. A lot of it was doing that and just putting the focus back on the customer. This
Interesting. So
industry,
you took a little bit of step back, right? You just mentioned that you started ironing the clothes, working in the at the bottom level. Like, was that strategic? What did that look like?
yes, it
What
was.
was going on?
Number one, I wanted to learn how to do it. If I was going to be
Yeah.
telling the others how we needed to improve, it was the first step that needed to take place. But the strategy behind that one was that our team was suffering when it came to quality, and they were afraid to send the product back to the team that was pressing the items. So I told them, anything that's not good quality, send it back to me. I was a lousy presser when I first started. And they started to bring these clothes back. And they started to realize we're all a team here. Nobody should get upset if you're returning a messy product. And what came from that is there was now an expectation that if they saw anything that wasn't in good shape, send it back. And eventually this, because again, it felt like there was high tension and drama in these rooms where the team were afraid to send the items back. So we quickly changed that culture and let them recognize this is what a good quality product looks like, because the business fails if there's poor quality. So that was step number one.
Wow. That is such a great mindset. Was that something that your father instilled in you, or was that something you came up with? How did that kind of thought process come to be?
The normal approach for an employee coming in was not, you were either working in the stores or you were working in the cleaning facility. We call them plants. I wanted to do it all and knew that I was there for only one reason, and that was to become the owner someday. So for me, if I just took a step back and realized what are our struggles? Well, customer service is tough. Well, why are customers upset? It's not price. We had the best price in town. So it came down to the quality and the service. Well, if we fix the
Wow.
quality, it makes the service component easier, because that's why customers would get upset for poor quality. And that's when our staff in the stores would run into altercations that they couldn't back their way out of. So
It's
everything led back to ground zero, which was the quality of the clothing.
amazing. So in your real estate business now that you run, did all of that knowledge flowing through, or is it like kind of was that left behind and now you've had a whole new set of skills? Talk to me about like that.
The skills are definitely different, but the principles still apply. I was used to running a low margin business. We would use profit and loss statements and everything you could touch and figure out what's happening with this business. I think real
Mm.
estate's the same way. I'm not somebody who chases risk. So for me, a lot of my projects are low risk, and I value that because when I look at these deals, I'm the very first investor putting my own money into it. And so I'm not in a situation to where I get wowed by high returns or these nice marketing brochures that tell me how real estate's going to change my life. I'd much rather
Yeah.
focus on preserving my own money and capital and making sure that it's a safe bet before I'm interested to go into it. So yeah, the foundations of the company and being an entrepreneur help me, because real estate is a business as well. It's not just a building that sits and earns. There's an active practice behind that.
So interesting. I'm just hearing from what you were just saying there before is that you were dealing with low margins. So you're always fine tuning and tweaking to make sure that you're making a profit, right? Because obviously you sold your business and you made a profit. You said you had an above average return on that, from what I remember. What I love about that, because you just said, I'm a low risk person. So you, I think, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong, that you might have learned a lot of that risk um, management process through that, and that kind of draws through into your real estate kind of acumen. Is that does that make sense? Or
You're spot on, because run a low profit margin business. every dollar counts. And I
Mm.
look at real estate the same way. For example, because commercial real estate is valued on a cap rate, you're essentially looking at the bottom line of the financials, and then it's valued based on a metric of that. So when we look to increase value in a property, you could look at something as simple as a expense line item like lawn maintenance over a large portfolio. And let's say that it's very expensive to mow the lawn, and you can somehow cut that down by a couple, $1,000 a year. Over 12 months, it's possible. So everything has to be measured in small changes, incremental changes that allow you to, in turn, enhance the value of these properties. That's the ultimate goal. And so, yes, it's very transferable from anyone who's an entrepreneur into that space because it's ran just like a business.
Sounds like you have a very deep knowledge, or how do I write this? A good understanding of your numbers. It sounds to me like you've really dialed in. How important is that for you, knowing your numbers?
The numbers are very important. I think that too many people get caught up on those, though, because I'm really looking for the people. Real estate is a full-time
Mm.
job for whoever's running it. And over the last couple of years, the industry has had especially in the commercial real estate world, has had a tough run. It all comes down to the people that are running it because you can have a great deal, but if the team is mediocre or subpar, the great deal will never come to be. So a lot of what I do now, yes, the numbers are crucial, but I'm trying to pass the people test first to make sure that I like this group that I'm going to work with, that I trust them, that they communicate well with me, because I'm going to turn around and have to do the same thing from a communication standpoint to my investors. And this is why I vet them uh, pretty intensely, background checks, going to these properties, making sure that everything stacks up, because when you're dealing with other people's money, there's no amount of gain from a business side that is worth harming somebody's, hard-earned dollars. So my job, again, on the low risk side is to make sure that I'm not getting myself or anybody else into something that may not be as it seems.
So interesting. These are fundamental business principles that you've built into your business, right? I love the idea of you said like numbers are important, but people is the power, right? Having the right people around you, working in your deals, or working even with you, right? What do you think, your thoughts about that?
You're right. My test now is, do I feel that this person is shooting me straight? If they come off as a salesman, again, I usually see right through that. Even if their intent is good, it's just not the type of partner that I'm looking for. So I want someone who's a hard worker, down to earth, and knows that business is tough, because there are cycles and everything, and business will get tough. Someone's going to get punched in the face, metaphorically, right? So I'm looking for that person that can withstand that. And if you talk to a guy and they're pitching you a deal and you ask about their failures and they haven't had them, well, it's not to say that they're not good at what they're doing, but you should approach it differently, because they may not be as seasoned as you want them to be. You want people to fail so that you know how they respond to it. You don't want to be the guinea pig on the first go around. That's easier said than done, but that's what you try to look for in advance so that you hopefully don't run into that.
Wow, then there's obviously a huge skill in that, right? You've obviously developed, honed the skill, and it sounds like you have people that come to you and you're just like, bullshit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I have my guard up because so often you'll see these very high returns, which are obviously attractive for investors. But even if those returns come to be, it comes at high risk. So you have to determine, number one, what's my risk appetite? I turn away a lot of opportunities to, raise money for people or to get into deals, not because they're bad deals, but only because it doesn't meet my risk appetite. I think that many of them could be great for those that are involved. I'm trying to develop my core business around a low risk perspective, to where if somebody needs higher returns, then they're going to take on more risk. And unfortunately, I want them to succeed at that, but they won't be doing it with me.
I
The
love that.
approach that I take.
I love that. And that's a very fundamental thing. I talk about that a lot. It's the things that you say no to that make you the money, right? The things that you have to be clear about in your business and in your trajectory. We have in our real estate business a similar context. And so the thing that's helped us grow is how many times we've said no to those awesome deals, or somebody's got this great little thing going on, or it sounds amazing. And that oftentimes can either distract you, take you off path, and then you lose focus and you get distracted. That's what's happened in my experience in the past. So I'm also very careful about who are the people I work with, who I don't work with. But most importantly, on what you said, Ian, is that you have a specific direction, right? You have this path that you're going on. And if somebody's outside of that, well, you wish them all the best. However, they're not going to be doing it with you. And I love that.
That's right.
I think
And
that
it
is so
works in both
important.
ways. It could be
Yeah.
towards the operator, the person that's running that deal, but also towards the investors that may come along. There are often people, let's say somebody has a lot of money and they're ready to invest, but they're demanding or pushy or there's expectations. What's great about this is you have the ability to say no. So, yes, raising capital is difficult, but it's much more difficult if you're willingly signing up for a bad partnership just to get some money from an investor. So that's another, fortunate thing that I am very cautious of, to make sure that is this person an investor, someone who I want to be communicating with for several years as well? Because some of these properties may go 3, 5, 10 years, or we hold them for longer. It's very much a partnership. And my job is to communicate with them frequently, but you want good people. Fortunately, I haven't run into that scenario, but there are many people I know in this space that have, and I've learned from them just to not do it. They'll say it's never worth taking the money to have to deal with somebody like that. So I've heard enough, and I'm not chasing anybody to come with us, right? Like we think, and when I say us, just I'm speaking of the company itself, and I take pride in what I find and what deals that I'm putting my own money into, which is way different than somebody that's an advisor pointing to a financial strategy or an investment that you should make that they're not in it. This is me thinking for me first, and then if it passes that criteria, we can bring along others to experience it as well. So it's different than the logic that many investors that are used to traditional, let's say, stock and ETF, the markets. That style of advising is much, much different than what we're doing. We're forming partnerships, and this is a team effort.
I so love your idea and your vision. I think so many people, there's a couple of things I want to dive into what you just said. First of all, saying no is super important, like getting into, and not just real estate deals, any kind of business, like even clients, like doing business with clients and they just nightmare, or they're not engaged the right way, or they have bad attitudes or bad mindsets. Like that's a painful place to be for anyone at any
Yeah,
business
not
level.
worth
And
it.
so I love how you frame that. It's really, really, I love that. The other thing is that you're talking about is putting skin in the game. Like how few entrepreneurs are prepared to do that, right? You've gone out and you said, look, I'm going to invest. I'm going to put my money in this. So it gives you security and certainty in this deal. So we're doing this together as a partnership. Now,
That's right.
I've run multiple businesses and I can say with hand on heart that when you put yourself in the mix, or you invest with people, or you give people results before getting money, like that is the most easiest way to make money, because people are attracted to that because they say, hey, this guy's got his, like he's got his shit together and he's prepared to do the hard work with me rather than just point me in the direction like you just said, which a lot of entrepreneurs do that. They're like, oh yeah, I'm great, I do this thing, go and check that out, or do this thing, and then sometimes they don't work out. Versus what you're doing, which is amazing, is you're putting skin in the game, and I love that. Like, how did that come to be? What was that, a big risk for you? Was that like, this is just how I'm going to do business? How did that kind of transpire?
It was from the position that I could not knowingly advise somebody to do something that I would not. So I think there's something morally wrong with that, and it's not how I wanted to run my business. A lot of times we'll put minimums on these transactions. So $50,000 in this industry is a very common number. So that investor needs to know that at a minimum, I too will have $50,000 of my own money. And I think that that really paints the picture of the alignment for what we're doing and the type of business that I'm trying to build. When you look
Amazing.
at the business through the lens of what do I want as a personal investor? What can I go tell my wife? How can I tell her we just made this investment and be proud of it? That's the kind of deal I'm looking for, and not having this big menu or playbook of options for people that I'm not quite certain how it's going to work out for them.
Good. Let's talk a little bit about mindset. I see behind you, I think you've got a pull-up bar there. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that's my Thailand photo. Thailand's my favorite country. We travel a lot.
Wow.
Lots
Love
of
it.
lots of Australians, by the way. I ran into a bunch of them over there this was back in the day on gap year or just traveling around.
Yeah. Loads in Indonesia and that. I love it myself. So I want to talk a little bit about mindset. Talk to me about your mindset and how you've kind of created a business, right? You've gone from strength to strength. Your dad's given you a business. Now I know a lot of people that have that opportunity and they just totally destroy it, mess it up. But you've taken it in stride. And I can tell by this conversation that you've got a very strong mindset around discipline and things. And by having a pull-up bar there right behind you, like it paints a picture. Talk to me about it. It's like, what is your goals? What is your mindset routine like? I'll work around about that.
My mindset is that you have to put yourself in a position to be prepared so that when luck does come, you're ready for it. I think a lot of people on the outside in and maybe see someone who they would view as successful. And often it's difficult. People measure success by material things or what they think success should look like, and they'll tie that to a measurement of money. For me, the success that comes from this again is preparation, hard work, a lot of vetting the team and the people that I work with, and then taking care of myself. You mentioned the pull up bar. My wife got me into running, and I run marathons, and this was her sport back in the day. And we have three little children now, so she'll get back into it. But I've gotten into this mindset of, taking care of myself. I'm always happier when I've exercised and I go at it to where even you wake up early and you think you're going to be tired. Like, this is the spot that I want to be in for the right mindset. And I have found, in fact, my last partner that we went into he was the operator of the mobile home park deal. This was an important decision-making factor for me from a trust standpoint. The guy was an ultra marathon runner, 100-mile races. And when I look at who I want to do business with, people that run 100 miles are a bit mad, but they have good work ethic and they're not going to quit when it's difficult. And so, ironically enough, the key criteria, but if there's the health component in there when I'm dealing with a partnership, I look for that as well, because generally those people don't quit when it gets hard.
I think that's right on because when you've been an athlete or you've been in sports, and you've been doing any of that stuff, I know you said it's not a criteria, but I find that as well, that a lot of people, my clients, especially the ones that are earning really high money, I'd say 99% of them are all into fitness. They're all working out, they're all training, they're all doing the early mornings, oftentimes cold plunges, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And when you talk to them about their health and their mindset, they're interconnected. It's like, if I don't work out, just like you said, if I don't work out, I'm not happy. I need that energy push and release. And that I think is so important these days in mindset. Like, I think people that aren't doing it regularly are missing out on an amazing opportunity because their body is letting them down because they're kind of all interconnected. What are your thoughts about that?
It's also a connection space for who you're working with. An example of that would be, you look like a fit guy, and if you went to the gym to get a trainer and your trainer was a slob, and you could tell he didn't exercise or she didn't exercise, you may not want to take lessons from them. So I think that you surround yourself with people that you want to do business with. And the challenging part in any business, not just real estate, is figuring out who is a good person. And again, I don't have a secret sauce to finding that out, but you do as much as you can to figure out who you want to work with. And then, one thing I spoke about this recently, people in this business, the investors that place money with me and ultimately going into these properties, we had this debate on whether or not it was an emotional or logical decision. And
Yeah.
many people that look at these sorts of things, they'll point to logic. I looked at the numbers, I've analyzed this, and I agree with that. I'm that person too. But I strongly believe that it's emotion that gets them over the edge, because logic only gets you so far. There has to be something that makes somebody pull the trigger and get involved with you. And I don't think that's logic. So a lot of what I work with is trying to figure out what's the best, again, for me in this investment, and then also for the people that are getting involved with us. What are they in it for? And ultimately, I'm not, you can tell I'm not a suit and tie type guy, and you don't need to be in real estate, but I want people to know that I'm authentic. So that's a very important part for me, that people know, what I'm doing, what I've done in my life, because I think that it, again, when somebody sits back and says, must be nice, it's like, no, I worked very hard and I take care of myself and I put myself in the position to where when the opportunity comes, I'm there to take it.
Good. Do you think luck is made or created?
You make luck. Well, a little bit of both. So you can create it through hard work, and it's hard to interpret this. But again, it's that preparation that gets you there. I think that if you were to take a guy like you that's driven and say, there's an opportunity for you to be a partner in this high achieving business, and then you found someone sitting on the street corner who had the same opportunity on paper, statistically, you would get that role. You would become the partner. And it's not luck that gets somebody there, it's putting yourself in the right position and doing the reps, right? Putting in the time to allow yourself to be that person.
Good. And that's very true. I think a lot of people are afraid of the reps, right? Pulling pull-ups. If you do want to build a
Yeah.
strong body, you got to do loads of pull-ups, right?
I swear I use it sometimes. Lots of hanging from it recently.
So funny. Love it. So let's take a little bit of step back into your journey now. You've accomplished quite a lot in your business. And I mean, we all want to have the best people around us, right? What are your thoughts about how you hire people in your business? Like, it's all well and good doing business with entrepreneurs, but you're building a team around you. Like, you've got people that are operators and people that invest with you, but then you've got to manage teams, right? You've got to manage people. What's your mindset around that and your thought process around that? One of the things that stands out for me is how, when you were in the previous business, in the laundry business, it was culture. And culture seemed to stand out as something that you said was quite important. How does that play its role in your business now?
Culture is very important, and you want to hire A players. I I read up a lot about this, and one thing that the consensus is, A players will show up and deliver results, but if you're a B player, you might look to hire C talent. And no one quite knows why, but perhaps it's because you don't have the confidence in yourself to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the best people. So I think every industry is different. When it comes to partnerships, you are definitely needing top tier, best in class to be that person. Obviously, different roles and different jobs, let's say, are hiring. They're still looking for the top talent, but there are several different tiers amongst that depending on the position in the company. But if you continuously hire, I think you should, this is for any business out there, never turn off your hiring mode or your hiring cap. The top talent will see that and come to you, and those that are on the bottom will naturally go away. And that's the way you need to run your life and your business, or your personal life too, not just your business. You want to surround yourself with people like that that make you better. And that's the hardest thing too. But if you talk to high achievers, ask them what rooms they're in, and it's that average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. The more you put yourself in positions to get to where and what you want to achieve, the more likelihood you will get there. And so again, you create your own luck.
Nice. I love that. So for the listeners out there, one of the things you spoke about, which was an important aspect of how you validate people, is how many knocks they've or how many failures they've had, which I think is important because failure does build resilience, strength, and a good business. You can't have a successful business without failing often.
Yeah.
Talk to me about some of the failures and some of the struggles or barriers that you've had to work through building your business.
I'll speak to one in my past career in that business. So when I bought the dry cleaners in 2016, went seven figures into debt and had to figure out what do I want to make from this company? And there was obviously a lot of upside for it and it took a lot of hard work. But I would say looking back, a failure was that I didn't partner and I didn't share the wealth as much as I wish I would have. I would do it differently the second go around and the next time I have a company with, that size, but I know that if you partner up and you surround yourself with the best, you'll ultimately, even if it's a smaller piece for you, you're going to get to where you need to be a little bit faster. And looking back, I think that I was the bottleneck of that business. I had centered so much of it around me because I didn't know any better. Again, I told you I started at 21. I didn't know how to run a business. You take what you get and you learn from it. So now, after going through the whole building, exiting, getting into another business, I see things a lot differently. And failure is important to talk about too, because so many people, especially with social media, everything is good and shiny. Everybody knows that successes don't just bring happiness, right? There's a lot of failure along the way. There's an internal drive too that's hard to satisfy. So it stops being about money and more about what can I accomplish next. I'll call it lonely, right? I was used to going into the office and having a large team. We had about 95 people, and then it went away and I was working solo. And for whatever reason, you figure out, what do I want to do? And you really have to think hard about what your next steps are going to be. But the key takeaway is have some failures, talk about them. All successful people built their success on failures. They also built it with people and partnerships. You don't do it alone. None of the billionaires that you know about today made it by themselves. So just important lessons to remember.
Wow. Sounds like you've had some very valuable lessons along your journey. I want to ask you this question. It's something that comes up quite a bit frequent recently for me is when starting or running or building a business, what's more important, do you think? Passion or skills?
I think passion beats skills. I would say that you don't want to get into a business because of passion, and what I mean by that is, let's pretend that you love to cook. And a lot of people get into the restaurant industry and find out that it's very difficult. They followed their passion. But once you're in it, if you have the passion, I think that hard work can beat skills any day of the week. And it's even easier than ever with AI and tools online and virtual assistants to help you run your business. There's so much that the generation before us didn't have that we now have at our disposal, that there's no excuse for somebody not to get it done. So skills and passion are important, but once you're in it, if you have the passion to continue, because if that drive and that passion sizzles away, then it can become difficult, when you wake up to figure out, why am I still doing this? Or do I need to be doing something different? And I think if your mind's not all in, then you're not giving it your best. And ultimately, because business is hard, that business won't make it if you're not giving it your best.
Interesting. A lot of people have different opinions about this, and everyone has a different way of looking at this. And the reason why I ask that is I recently read a book called Become So Good They Can't Ignore You. Great book to read. And in the book, he talks about how there's this big industry push about following your passion. And obviously, you need to have drive to want to do the thing that you're doing. The stats are out that most people that put a passion first end up failing because it's the skills that drive the results. However, you brought something really interesting into that conversation about hard work and how hard work trumps skills every time, which I think is really interesting to consider because if you do have the drive to do something, the hard work will help you build the skills because you're going to pick things up along the way, right? I was really interested. And that was a good answer. You said that there is no right or wrong answer in it because these things play, they kind of balance on each other. Because who wants to do a business that sucks or
Yeah,
they don't
but
enjoy it?
to your point though, sometimes it's not all about passion, and a leader can maybe they enjoy the system making of the business, or identifying a process that helps the business flow smoothly. An example would be if you owned a trash company, your passion may not be picking up trash, but
Yeah.
session with doing it efficiently or running the cleanest routes with your drivers. So I think there's lots of ways to find it within a business that may not otherwise seem attractive, but it's there depending on what motivates you.
Skills are part of that, just as you're saying. So, really good conversation. We could dive into that so many different directions. I want to know what makes you so passionate about real estate and doing the business that you're doing right now.
It started years back and seeing the time freedom that it brought. When I was young, my dad was able to go to all of my sport events. He was a coach in a lot of things. We got to travel, and I knew because he wasn't tied to a W-2 job that real estate and his business was what did it. So I think naturally that's when I wanted to get involved with it as well. And real estate is difficult. It is, but a lot of the work is on the front end and setting yourself up with something safe. And once you do, I believe it's less work on the day to day. So, what really matters to me and why I wanted to build this business instead of diving back in and buying a service business was that I work with a much smaller team and I'm able to have the time freedom that I want. Real estate's that answer for me. And I try to tell everybody grow wealth outside of your business. We're seeing massive layoffs in these companies, tech companies specifically right now, and engineers that have historically been very safe jobs. And now things are getting flipped upside down. And so I think that people need to recognize the writing on the wall and figure out what can I do right now that will help me in the event that I get that Thursday morning email that my department's closed down or whatever it may be. So build wealth outside your business and set yourself up because you never know what is going to happen in life, and you might as well have something working for you when you're not working.
Good. I love that. Real estate is a very solid foundation to build from because it's always there, right? It's never going to disappear. Like we need real estate, we need places to live. And so I like that. And how do you see the future playing out in your industry?
The last 3 years have been really difficult for real estate operators. Mainly it was tied to not choosing the correct debt. So a lot of people were getting floating interest rates, and that came back to bite them when we had, I think, 11 or 12 interest rate hikes. Now, for those that can survive, I think that there's good opportunity, especially for those that are getting into it now with where interest rates are. People sit on the sidelines too often and say that rates are too high. And I'm talking entry level, right? Not sophisticated real estate operators, but especially if you're interested in perhaps buying a rental in your local market, don't sit on the sidelines and wait, because taking action is much more important than somebody analyzing it forever. When I first got started, there was no underwriting. It was simply how much is my mortgage? How much rent will I get? And is there a difference? And that was it. And I did that year after year. Now it's much more sophisticated, and I wish it was as easy as the old days. But, you know, for me, that's what would be my message to everyone, is just to make sure that they take action, they're constantly learning, and they also diversify where they have their funds.
Love it. And so, what makes what you do unique and different? That why should people invest with you over anyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think people in general, again, I mentioned beforehand that it's a people business. And this question comes up a lot. Why would somebody work with me instead of going directly to the operator? It seems like I'm just in the way. I also thought that when I first was pitched as an investor to get into something, I immediately thought I can go around and get a better deal. The way that it's structured today, and it's a win win for everybody, is that capital raisers or syndicators that are pooling money so we can go co-invest together, they often will get a better deal because they're bringing more to the table as a group. So when I present something, there's never an opportunity to go directly to the operator and get a better deal. I'm structuring it to where we're paying them equal or better on their investment. And ultimately, it's a trust issue. A lot of the network that we work with, I know their families and their wife's names and their children, and they perhaps maybe the deal that we're going into, they don't know the operator running the day to day. So their trust is in me. And again, we talked about emotion being the final decision in any sort of investment. And to, to that point, I think that it's important that you have trust in somebody and that, I can pick up the phone and call this person anytime. So a lot of it is just building relationships and making sure that hopefully people will trust you and like you and, feel that you are a good steward of their money. And I think that I'm a good person for that. And whether or not somebody has interest in that, again, we're having fun along the way. We're making investments, bringing in. The last deal we had was they were not real estate people, and a lot of people got involved in the space, and now they own mobile home parks. Some of them will laugh like, I thought I'd never. Why would I ever think that I would own those? But because they have a bad stigma, by the way. Some think that they're not great places to be, but they're very nice communities where there's families, and it's not all slum like sometimes people think incorrectly. There's bad houses and bad apartment complexes in every asset. So it's just been a fun journey along the way and getting to go at a slow pace because I don't need to do many per year. We have just a couple that come up and it's fun.
That sounds so interesting. So trust is a big factor in how you're building your business. And when people get to meet you and they can see that you're doing the thing, you're obviously evidencing the results that you have. But ultimately, you have this whole trust factor happening in your business, which I think is huge because in today's economy, trust is one of the most important factors to be able to do business. And with such a trust recession happening these days, you need that. Like that is so important. Authenticity, which you've already mentioned. Knowing people like really deep and intimately, that emotional context and connection. And those are very powerful tools that you're wielding for growing your business. So I can assume that you're going to do very well in all of this. And I'm pretty sure you're already doing pretty well. So
Thank you.
here's the thing. You have a process, right, of doing your business. And I'm sure that your process is very unique and sets you apart from all the other people as well. Do you have something, or is there like a step-by-step system that you have that you work through people on? Or you just kind of, every deal kind of works itself out in a different way?
No, there's definitely steps that I'll follow, and it depends on the deals because we have mobile home parks. And when those come up, it's almost like buying a house, right? You have a contract, you have a certain period of time to where you choose to go forward or not. And when those come up, there's a certain cadence with our investor network that will follow, announcing the deal, gauging interest. I'll have webinars. I'm going out to these properties. And so that's much more finite. And that
Yeah.
serves generally people that are looking at, they have a longer horizon to where they are looking at building equity, future upside. I also do private lending. That's fixed and flat and consistent. And that is more catered towards people 55 and up that want consistency and aren't willing to play with the market as much anymore. So the process for me is identifying what matters to the individual. What do they want? Because for many, there's no need for them to, like, if somebody is 75 years old and they've got a couple, they're looking for fixed income, there's no reason for them to be in the mobile home park space for future upside, right? They need to be in something that helps them today, that they can access their money. I always try to figure out what they need because I might not be the right solution for them. And then, yes, it's a lot of, communicating, checking in with even when there are not deals and just letting people know what's going on in the market, things that I'm seeing, even if they don't open the email, right? We do a lot of this through email communication. At least they can see that you're active and you're in this business and working. And that's my ultimate goal, is just to educate, 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 so that, again, I believe you're building trust at the same time, because not everybody wants to jump in and just go tackle real estate themselves. In fact, I wish that I knew someone that was doing what I do now 10 years ago, because I didn't have any more time. I couldn't keep buying property because I felt like I wasn't managing them properly. And frankly, I just didn't have the time with being so involved with the business. So that's what has been fun, is helping people see that there's a way to do it. In fact, when you drive by large apartment complexes, or even sports teams are sometimes set up this way, it could be a bunch of people like you and me that put in $50,000, and we might own a quarter of a percent or something. And I didn't know this 10 years ago, that the world ran that way. But now I do. And it's kind of funny. You say, oh, I own a quarter of a percent of that thing. You're not doing anything on the day to day, but that's the kind of opportunity that exists out there.
Good. I love what you're saying is that so many people, like you said, I got to a point where I invested, but it got too much for me to maintain. And I think a lot of people get to that point, right? Two aspects, what I've found in real estate is they invest to a point where they're over leveraging. And so that becomes a tricky component. So what you're offering is a way where they can't really over leverage, but they're investing and it's passive. The other is that maintenance and management becomes a huge issue for so many people, investors. Like if you owned an apartment building, for instance, you got to make sure your managers are there doing the thing. You got to reach KPIs. You got to make sure your rents are good. You got to have good tenants, etc. And I'm assuming that in a mobile home park, you have the same context, right? You got to make sure that the rents are being paid, that all this kind of stuff is happening. And so your role is removing all of that overwhelm or complexity from your clients, so you have a system in place to manage all of that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
That's amazing. Imagine investing in real estate and you don't have to do all the hard work. How good is that?
Yeah. And it's funny because actually a large percentage of the profit goes towards the investor. These deals are generally structured to where it takes care of the passive investor first, and the people running the deal, they then cover expenses along the way, but their profit comes from performance at the end. So I also like the way that they're aligned. The investor, the passive investor that's putting their own money in, they are structured to where they come first. And obviously, they usually fall behind bank debt. Let's say they're number two in line, but the operators that are running the deal generally fall beneath that. And so you're in good alignment when that scenario is set up, because
Yeah.
the person running the deal doesn't really get paid or doesn't come out ahead if they don't perform. So I like that too. The passive investors, their capital is needed to get these deals done. And that's why it's structured that way, because buildings get expensive.
I really love the way that you designed and structured your business. I think you're doing an amazing job. I don't think like it would be silly to think that you wouldn't be a great person to invest with because you're putting skin in the game. That is one of the greatest assets I think any coach, consultant, expert in any industry can do is if you're putting your skin in the game, that's when growth happens rapidly. People trust you, people want to do business with you, and that's such a powerful thing. Pleasure talking to you, Ian, by the way. I've learned so much unique and new things today about what you're doing. What would be a very key message that you would share with other entrepreneurs out there about building, growing, and sustaining their businesses?
I think it's important to start off to where you put yourself in the center. If you're starting to build, you put yourself in the center of that business. Too many people say you should be working on your business and not in it. I think that that is hype, and that successful business owners know they have to be in it, at least in the beginning, until they set up the team and system to help them out. So I would say whatever you're diving into, whether it's a small business or some other form of entrepreneurship, get involved and don't outsource too much too fast. Learn the key components of it so that you can be the architect of that business. Because if you come in from a position of trying to run your business passively, I don't believe it'll ever work. So somebody at the captain's seat needs to be active and needs to know exactly what's going on down to every dollar in that business.
Wow, I love that. That's a very powerful message. Thank you so much. So, if there were people that want to work with you in the future, how would they get hold of you?
What I'll do for the listeners of this show, I put together a cheat sheet that is for anyone who's curious in passive investing. It goes over questions for what they should be asking, what the process looks like once they're on someone's email list, et cetera. So we'll leave that in the show notes. That's going to be the most value to any listener is to download that quick little chart to take a look and see if it fits their investing appetite.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Guys, it's been an honor listening to you today, Ian. I've learned quite a lot about real estate and an investing avenue that I never thought about before. Mobile homes, what a cool place, right? That's something very different. I
Yeah.
think investing in affordable housing and in that area is a very lucrative space as well. And I think it's very underspoken about and undervalued in the real estate community at large. But thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate having you here today. Hoping to talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.